Page 4, video 5. Now we're in the circle thing. Growing your comfort zone. Oh, let's put the camera right there. Fabulous. And can't even really see the undone dishes. So it's the circle page. So, at the beginning of every mindfulness, they do this thing where they go at the dry board and they put these 3 circles like a target. And then they ask people to go up and put where we feel like right then in that moment. And speaking of in the moment, after I get done with this, I'm going to do the teepee before we do any more other stuff. So the 3 circles are the very center circle is your comfort zone. The other circle that's in the middle is the learning zone. And the other circle is the panic zone. And then out here is probably where you're having a behavior. If you get that far out. I actually don't get quite as far out as people think that I get far out, but I get far out in my head. And for sure I've seen people get pretty far out there and get hauled off by staff to the sunshine room, which was isolation in the place where I got sent to as a teenager. So yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the whole scene, and I'm saying that I have experience with this stuff. Not as a high-class person, but the same way as the person that wrote this, which is one reason why I really have quite a bit of admiration for the person that wrote this material. And again, they don't know me at all. I have admiration and respect for them, but they have no idea who I am. But apparently they went through some serious challenge too, just like about as hardcore as mine. Shorter though. Then they went on to become a normal human being. I just like never got over it. But because then they got a PhD and they developed this material. So yeah, outside the panic zone, we definitely better area to avoid. The comfort zone is just like, it's where I'm at in my house. When I don't have this camera on, right? So it's just the comfort zone when you're hanging out with your friends, your family, taking your dog for a walk in a place where you guys are really comfortable and nothing's going on. Just like easy, relaxed, totally. Learning zone is in between the comfort and the panic zone, so you're alert, you're paying attention. It's not something that you've done over and over again. You're aware that you're taking in new information and processing that. The panic zone is where you get so uncomfortable, though, that you get out of the learning zone and you kind of like go into a place where you're just like, maybe you're having like so much social anxiety or some kind of like physical body feeling where you're like uncomfortable in your body. Maybe your clothes feel too tight, or maybe they really are too tight or too loose or itchy, or your tags or your socks. Or I do have a lot of experience with all this stuff for sure. So anyway, whatever's going on, you're outside of the ability to really get a good learning experience, and so not really taking in the full details of the experience. If you're listening, you might not be hearing all the words, or maybe you're hearing the sound, but it's not processing right. Same with your visuals. If you're visualing, you might not really see or you might read in too much to body language. So those are all things to just be aware of, I think, in the panic zone. I really spent a lot of years in the panic zone. I had a trippy experience when I was an infant, and but I don't want to trigger anybody. But it wasn't like anything, you know, pedophilia. But it was a scientific experiment, a science family, and that's why I advocate for morals and values and ethical training for scientists. Please. So they did that experiment where they throw you in the pool as an infant, and then you're supposed to swim. It's just the sink or swim, and no offense, but it's the Republican version of worldview. So here you got a bunch of people that are like, here baby, sink or swim. You got no idea how to swim, but you got that instinct, and if you don't, you're a genetic cull anyway. So there I was, and I didn't really think anything of it. Here I am sharing my stuff, so I'm going to have to turn this video off, but I was going to do a video about this anyway, so I'll change the title to sink or swim, maybe. So there I was, like, and the reason that I even know about this experience, or knew about this experience, was because my grandma, who was really, I think, the adult that my flashlight for reading in dark places, that I think had the most conscience and cared about kids, generally cared about kids the most out of my early nurturers. There wasn't a lot of actual, you know, attachment, emotional attachment between the adults and the children. My dad kind of, but I mean, I don't remember him, and it wasn't necessarily all positive emotional attachment on that side for sure. But that's another story and non-triggerable. So back to the swimming experience. So I was a baby, and my grandma, who I liked, but who was a racist and did, you know, tell me that brown eyes freaked her out because they were like dog eyes, and she liked the other cousin better because they had the same eyes, blah, blah, blah. I was just like, that's another thing that I just like kind of passed on and didn't even think about until recently. Well, I did, but... So back to the baby thing in the pool at Smith Gym on Washington State University campus. I don't think that pool exists anymore, but I remember it well, and had a lot of good experiences in that pool too. So I really, you know, but this wasn't one of the positive ones. Afterwards, I learned how to swim when I was like 15. Yeah, I failed until then. I just freaking failed at swimming until then after this experience. But then at 15, I learned how to swim. 14, 15, sometime in that place up in the mental place where they had staff that would haul us off. They also had a pool that we got to use, I think, once or twice, and I learned how to swim. And back to the baby thing. God, oh, and then after that, I did one time, and I would not advocate for it, and I would not do it again. But I did swim all the way across the river and back. And in a non-trigger video, I might add the details of that. That took hours. I couldn't do it again, obviously. I would drown. I can't believe I didn't drown the first time. But back to the baby thing. So I overcame this baby thing. I overcame the baby thing before I went to counseling about it. So then I had this opinion about it because my grandma really felt bad. She's the only adult out of the 4 adults involved, my mom, my dad, and my grandpa. 2 scientists and a fine art major, and then grandma was a PE at the athletics at the college level. And she's the only one that felt bad, and she did feel bad because she told me over and over, and I'm like, Grandma, I'm over it. I got it. And I think that part of the deal was that I like never learned how to swim in a satisfactory manner. I didn't like putting my face in the water. I still especially don't, but I could do it. Anyway, so yeah, waterboarding still goes on in my head. CIA was a little bit of a trigger, I guess. I don't know. But Grandma felt bad. I didn't feel bad. I told her I was over it. Then I kind of wondered, well, maybe that maybe I've always had PTSD ever since I was a kid. Maybe I got PTSD from that experience. It kind of seems like it gave grandma PTSD to have to participate in that experience, which I totally can understand. I'm laughing, but it's like sometimes you just laugh or you're going to bonk your head on the table, right? So then I started thinking that, and I went through thinking that for years. I didn't have any money for therapy, and talk therapy isn't something you can really take to the infant experience. It's just a stupid idea, and it just blah 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 on. Sometimes it's too much. I can't handle it, and no offense, I really appreciate my talk therapist. Total respect for the talk therapy experience. I just like am personally uncomfortable with mushy stuff, and talk therapy is a little bit mushy. So I really like this new kind of therapy that they just developed, which I processed this baby experience. Here we are, 11 minutes in. We get to the point. I processed the baby experience, and I was surprised that my feelings were not one of victimhood or feeling sad or feeling scared. Baby me was pissed off. Baby me thought the adults were idiots. And baby me was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You've like when I was processing it, because so the EMDR is really cool. It's like when you do, and you and there's a different one that you can do that's like slow. You can do sound. You can do taps. The fast one is for processing, and the slow one is for installing programs. So you can install positive things like, well, you probably can install negative things too. Anyway, you can't do that without help, because you have to go through the whole thing. But you can if you go in for EMDR, it's really cool because it works really fast. There's not a lot of talk therapy involved. There's just not. You come up with an image, then there's like 8 steps that you work through. There's 8 processes that you work through. Takes you about 8 sessions, 10 sessions, maybe 14 sessions to deal with one issue. Takes you through these long-standing issues amazingly. You will have to sign a release. Can bring up like a lot of huge stuff, but I already had processed the majority of my super huge stuff, although I did still freak out and I had some really trippy experiences in that. And other people that I've talked to, had some really, but anyway, I like it because no talk therapy, minimal talk. It has a framework. It has paperwork associated with it, like standardized paperwork. I'm really big into standardized paperwork. If you're going to have paperwork, I don't want all those loose, random. I'm loose and random enough mentally. I want my therapist to be like, a little bit Hitler. Sorry, trigger warning, but there you have it. I think in the very first video I said I'm a lib, but I also really, really appreciate Trump. Kind of an authoritarian, raised by supremacists of every nature, that everybody is better than me. So that's my life experience. So, yep. But the therapy has nothing to do with Hitler. So, I mean, sorry, but it does appeal to my authoritarian nature and my need for that structure. And it's minimal talk, minimal mushiness. Nobody's like, I hate that. So, growing your comfort zone, I have learned to like deal with that mushiness, and I can mush back, and I love people. It's just that, I really wasn't really allowed to sit on people's lap. Like my grandma, I remember one time she was snuggling me on my lap, and I wasn't allowed to like sit on her lap. So now we're at 14:19, 14:20. Should I read this? Should I not read this? I'm going to do another comfort zone video and rename this comfort zone swimming thing. So I did the EMDR, I did process that, and I processed going into the middle school. That was really an amazing one too. It felt like flipping through a book like this. The image that I had chosen, like when we started the process of tick, 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 it was like It was weird. It was super weird. Or maybe it felt more like a card deck when you take the deck of cards and you're shuffling it and you go like that and it smushes together like a book like that. It felt like that. And I asked the therapist, I was like, is that normal? And she said sometimes. Because the same image of walking through the front doors of that school was the basis for like just like pages. Like, so apparently every single time I walked through the front doors of that school, I had so much trauma that it created an unprocessed event in my brain. Yeah, it like kind of like I can kind of feel it right now. So other things that as you go through that therapy, part of the process is that the therapist, you do the tick ticking or ding dinging or vibration. It can be manual or there's like headphone hand thingies. So you go through that and then the therapist will do feedback with you, like how did that feel? That's one of the things. And they'll check in with you and see if you had any feelings in your body, because sometimes you'll get different kinds of feedback in your body. Like I've had pressures in my ears and my eyes. Really an interesting therapy. I think, I don't even remember what EMDR stands for, but the tapping is part of it. I'll read the tapping thing to you too. But first I'm going to do another video of this because I really want to get this done for real.